Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel. The research ship Aurora was old, and her pipes always seemed to break at the worst times. He had been fixing the same waterline for 3 hours when the emergency alarm started screaming. The red lights flashed through the ship as Jake pulled himself out of the tunnel. His radio crackled to life with Captain Ryan Foster's voice. "All hands to stations. We have picked up a distress signal from an unknown vessel. This is not a drill." Jake grabbed his tools and started running toward the main deck. He had never seen a real alien ship before. Nobody on the Aurora had. Earth had been sending research ships into deep space for 5 years, but they had never found anything except empty planets and dead rocks. The bridge was busy with activity when Jake arrived. Through the big windows, he could see a strange ship floating in space. It was black and covered with sharp edges that looked like weapons. Smoke was coming from several holes in its side. "It's badly damaged," said Lieutenant Kate Harper from her security station. "Life signs show one survivor." Captain Foster was a calm man who never raised his voice. He looked at the alien ship for a long moment before speaking. "Bring it into the cargo bay. Send Dr. Amy Collins and her medical team down there, and get a security team ready." Jake watched as the cargo bay doors opened and pulled the alien ship inside. He wanted to see what was happening, but he had work to do. The ship's systems were running hot because of the extra power needed for the rescue. 2 hours later, Jake was fixing a power coupling in the lower deck when he heard shouting from the medical bay. He dropped his tools and ran toward the noise. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. A creature stood in the medical bay that was unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was 12 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like black stone. Its body was covered in what looked like natural armor, and its head had no hair but 2 large eyes that glowed red in the dim light. The creature was making loud noises at Dr. Collins and her team. Its voice was deep and sounded angry. 3 security guards had their weapons pointed at it, but they looked scared. "I am Commander Zarathul of the Korthak Empire," the creature said in perfect English. "You will release me immediately or face the anger of my people." Dr. Collins was trying to stay calm, but Jake could see her hands shaking. "We rescued you from your damaged ship. You are hurt and need medical care." "I need no help from weak creatures like you," Zarathul said. She took a step forward, and the security guards raised their weapons higher. That was when Jake made a mistake. He was so surprised by what he was seeing that he stepped backward and bumped into a medical cart. The cart fell over with a loud crash, and everyone in the room turned to look at him. But something strange happened when Zarathul saw Jake. The angry look on her face disappeared. Her forearms, which had been raised in a threatening way, slowly lowered to her sides. Her glowing red eyes fixed on Jake, and she became completely quiet. "Sorry," Jake said, feeling embarrassed. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Zarathul continued to stare at him. She tilted her head to one side like a curious animal. "You," she said, and her voice was much softer than before. "What are you called?" Jake Martinez." "Jake," she repeated slowly, as if testing how the name sounded. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She took a step back and lowered her head in what looked like a bow. Dr. Collins looked confused. "Commander Zarathul, this is Jake Martinez. He works in ship maintenance." "Maintenance," Zarathul said, still looking at Jake. "You fix things that are broken." "Yes," Jake said, not sure why she seemed so interested. Zarathul nodded slowly. "This is good work. Important work." She looked around the medical bay and then back at Jake. "May I sit? I am feeling weak." The change in her behavior was so sudden that nobody knew what to say. Just minutes before, she had been threatening everyone in the room. Now she was asking permission to sit down. "Of course," Dr. Collins said quickly. "Please let us help you." But Zarathul kept looking at Jake. "Is it acceptable to you, Jake Martinez?" Jake didn't understand why she was asking him, but he nodded. "Sure, you should rest." Zarathul carefully sat down on the medical table. She was still huge, even sitting down, but she no longer seemed dangerous. She watched Jake with what almost looked like interest. Captain Foster arrived a few minutes later with more security. He had been told about the alien's aggressive behavior, so he was surprised to find her sitting quietly on the medical table. "Commander Zarathul," he said formally, "I am Captain Ryan Foster of the research vessel Aurora. We found your ship damaged and brought you aboard to help you." Zarathul looked at the captain, and some of the hardness returned to her voice. "I did not ask for your help, human." Nevertheless, you needed it, Captain Foster said. Your ship was losing air and power. You would have died if we had not found you. Better to die with honor than live with shame, Zarathul replied. The conversation continued, but Jake noticed that every few seconds Zarathul would look at him. When their eyes met, her expression would soften for just a moment before she turned back to the captain. Finally, Captain Foster said, Mr. Martinez, could you please return to your duties? We have diplomatic matters to discuss. Jake started to leave, but Zarathul spoke up. Will Jake Martinez return? Everyone looked surprised by the question. Captain Foster frowned. Why do you ask? He has honest work. I respect this. Zarathul's red eyes found Jake again. Will you return, Jake Martinez? Jake looked at Captain Foster, who shrugged. I guess so. If you want me to. I do, Zarathul said simply. As Jake left the medical bay, he heard Dr. Collins start asking Zarathul questions about her injuries, but he could feel the alien's eyes watching him until he was out of sight. Something very strange was happening, and Jake had the feeling that his quiet life as a maintenance worker was about to change forever. The next morning, Jake woke up thinking about the strange alien woman. He had barely slept because he kept remembering how she had looked at him. It was not the way someone looks at an enemy or even a stranger. It was more like how his little sister used to look at him when she wanted his attention. After breakfast, Jake went back to his work fixing the ship's systems. But he found it hard to concentrate. He kept wondering what Zarathul was doing and if she was feeling better. Around noon, Dr. Collins found him in the engine room. She looked tired and confused. Jake, I need to ask you something, she said. Have you ever met any aliens before yesterday? No, Jake said. You know, Earth has never made contact with aliens before. That's what I thought. Dr. Collins sat down on a toolbox. Something very strange is happening with our guest. She has been asking about you all morning. Jake stopped working and looked at her. Asking about me? What kind of questions? Everything. What you do, where you come from, what you like to eat. She wants to know if you have family, if you are happy with your work, if you need anything. Dr. Collins shook her head. Jake, I have been studying alien behavior reports for years. This is not normal. What do you mean? The Korthak are known throughout this part of space. They are warriors who respect only strength and power. They take what they want and destroy what they cannot use. But Commander Zarathul is acting completely different around you. Jake felt confused. I don't understand. I just talked to her for a few minutes. That's exactly what makes it so strange. Dr. Collins stood up. With everyone else, she is cold and demanding. She orders us around like we are servants, but when you are mentioned, she becomes almost gentle. Before Jake could ask more questions, his radio buzzed. It was Captain Foster. Mr. Martinez, please report to the medical bay immediately. Jake and Dr. Collins walked there together. When they entered, they found Zarathul sitting in the same place as yesterday. But this time she was not alone. Lieutenant Kate Harper was there with 2 security guards, and they all looked frustrated. Jake, Captain Foster said when he saw them. Thank goodness you're here. We have been trying to get information from Commander Zarathul about her people, but she refuses to cooperate. Jake looked at Zarathul. When she saw him, her whole body seemed to relax. Hello, Jake Martinez, she said softly. Hi, Jake said. How are you feeling? Better now that you are here. She looked around the room at the other people. These others ask many questions, but they do not listen to answers. Lieutenant Harper stepped forward. We need to know about Korthak military strength and intentions. Earth needs to be prepared if more of your ships come looking for you. Zarathul's expression became hard again. I will tell you nothing, human. My people do not explain themselves to weaklings. The tension in the room grew thick. Jake could see that Lieutenant Harper was getting angry. But then Zarathul looked at him again. Jake Martinez, she said. Do you wish to know about my people? Jake was surprised by the question. Well, yes. I think it would be interesting. Then I will tell you. Zarathul turned her back on the others and focused completely on Jake. The Korthak Empire controls 47 star systems. We are warriors who have never lost a battle. Our ships are the strongest in this part of space, Lieutenant Harper tried to interrupt. How many ships do you have? What are their weapons like? But Zarathul ignored her completely. She continued talking only to Jake. We live for honor in battle. The weak serve the strong, and the strong protect those who cannot protect themselves. That sounds like a hard way to live, Jake said. It is the only way to live with dignity, Zarathul replied, but it can be lonely. The sadness in her voice surprised everyone, especially Jake. Lonely? A warrior must always be strong. We cannot show weakness or fear. We cannot ask for help or comfort. Zarathul was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I think it would be nice to be weak just for a little while. Jake didn't know what to say to that. He looked around the room and saw that everyone was staring at them. Captain Foster looked like he was trying to solve a difficult puzzle. Commander Zarathul, the captain said carefully, are you saying that Korthak never show emotion? Zarathul turned to face him and her cold expression returned. Emotion is weakness. Weakness leads to defeat. Defeat leads to death. But you just told Jake that you feel lonely, Dr. Collins pointed out. Zarathul looked confused for a moment. Then she looked at Jake with what seemed like panic. I did not mean to say that. It's okay, Jake said quickly. Everyone feels lonely sometimes. It doesn't make you weak. Yes, it does, Zarathul said, but her voice was uncertain. No, it doesn't, Jake said firmly. Being lonely just means you care about other people. That's actually a good thing. Zarathul stared at him for a long time. You truly believe this? Yes, I do. But if I show weakness, how can I protect those who depend on me? Jake thought about this. Maybe protecting people isn't about being the strongest. Maybe it's about caring enough to keep trying, even when you're scared or lonely. The room was completely quiet. Everyone could see that something important was happening, but nobody understood what it was. Finally, Zarathul spoke again, but her voice was different, softer. Jake Martinez, you speak strangely of strength and weakness, but your words do not sound foolish to me. I'm glad, Jake said. I would like to continue this conversation, Zarathul said, but only with you. The others may listen if they remain quiet. Lieutenant Harper started to object, but Captain Foster stopped her with a hand gesture. He had realized that Jake was the key to getting information from their alien guest. For the next 2 hours, Jake and Zarathul talked while the others listened. She told him about Korthak culture, their technology, and their empire. But she also told him things that surprised everyone. She talked about how young Korthak were taught never to show fear, even when they were terrified. She described the loneliness of command and the burden of always having to be perfect. She spoke about the beauty of her home world and the friends she had lost in battle. With every minute that passed, Zarathul seemed to become more relaxed and open. But only when she was talking to Jake. Whenever someone else tried to join the conversation, she would become cold and distant again. As the day ended, Captain Foster pulled Jake aside. I don't know what's happening here, the captain said, but it's clear that you have some kind of connection with her. I'm going to need you to keep talking to her. We need to understand the Korthak and their intentions. Jake nodded, but he felt worried. He was just a maintenance worker. He didn't know anything about diplomacy or first contact with aliens. But somehow he had become the most important person on the ship. That night, as Jake tried to sleep, he wondered what would happen when Zarathul's people came looking for her. Because he was sure they would come, and when they did, would they see him as a friend or as the enemy who had stolen one of their warriors? The answer to that question was coming sooner than anyone expected. In the depths of space, sensors that Jake knew nothing about were already detecting the approach of the Korthak fleet. Jake was eating breakfast when the alarm started screaming again. This time they were different alarms. These were the ones that meant enemy ships were coming. He ran to the nearest window and looked out into space. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 5 massive ships were approaching the Aurora. They were much larger than Zarathul's damaged vessel, and looked like they could destroy the research ship without any effort. All hands to battle stations. Captain Foster's voice came over the speakers. This is not a drill. We have 5 Korthak warships approaching our position. Jake ran toward the medical bay where Zarathul was staying. He found chaos when he arrived. Dr. Collins and her team were trying to move equipment while security guards prepared for the worst. But Zarathul was calm. She was standing by the window looking at the approaching ships with what looked like relief. My people have come for me, she said when she saw Jake. Are they going to attack us? Jake asked. Zarathul looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. That depends on many things. Captain Foster arrived with Lieutenant Harper and several other officers. Commander Zarathul, we need to know your intentions. Are these ships here to rescue you or to destroy us? Both, Zarathul said simply. If you have treated me well, they will take me home and leave you alone. If you have harmed me or dishonored me, they will turn your ship into space dust. We saved your life, Lieutenant Harper said angrily. How is that dishonor? Being saved by weaklings is the greatest dishonor a Korthak can suffer, Zarathul replied. Unless what? Captain Foster asked. Zarathul looked at Jake. Unless the ones who saved me are not as weak as they appear. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the radio crackled to life. A deep, threatening voice spoke in a language that sounded like growling. That is Fleet Commander Vaktar, Zarathul said. He is my father's brother and the greatest warrior in our fleet. What is he saying? Captain Foster asked. He demands to speak with whoever is holding me prisoner. You're not a prisoner, Jake said. We rescued you. I know this, Zarathul said softly, but he does not understand yet. Captain Foster straightened his uniform. Tell him I am the captain of this vessel and I wish to speak with him. Zarathul spoke into the radio in her own language. The response came quickly and sounded very angry. He says he will speak only to the human leader, Zarathul translated. He wishes to see this person before he decides whether to destroy your ship. That's me, Captain Foster said, but Zarathul shook her head. No, he means the one who leads me, the one I follow. Everyone looked confused except Jake, who was starting to understand. He means me, doesn't he? Yes, Zarathul said. You are the one I respect most on this ship. In Korthak culture, this makes you my leader. But I'm not anyone's leader, Jake protested. I fix pipes and engines. It does not matter what your job is, Zarathul said. It matters that I choose to follow you. Captain Foster looked like he was getting a headache. This is insane. Jake is not qualified for diplomatic contact. Perhaps not, Zarathul said. But Commander Vaktar will not speak to anyone else. If you refuse, he will assume you are all holding me against my will. And then? Lieutenant Harper asked. Then he will destroy this ship and everyone on it. The bridge was silent for a moment. Finally, Captain Foster sighed. Jake, it looks like you're our diplomat now. 10 minutes later, Jake found himself on the bridge, staring at a huge screen that showed the inside of one of the Korthak ships. The creature looking back at him was even more frightening than Zarathul. Commander Vaktar was bigger, older, and covered in scars that spoke of many battles. So, Vaktar said in a voice like thunder, you are the human who leads my niece. I don't lead anyone, Jake said. Zarathul is free to make her own choices, yet she chooses to follow you. This is very interesting. Vaktar leaned forward. Do you know what we call your species, human? No, sir. We call you the gentle destroyers or sometimes silent death. Do you know why? Jake felt confused and frightened. No, sir. I don't understand. Vaktar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it wasn't friendly. Of course you don't. Your people never understand what they do. What do we do? You make us love you, Vaktar said simply. And that makes us dangerous. Jake looked around the bridge. Everyone looked as confused as he felt. I don't understand. Let me explain, Vaktar said. For the past 50 years, human ships have been exploring our part of space. Every species that meets humans reports the same thing. Your people have a strange power. You make other species want to protect you and care for you. That doesn't sound dangerous, Jake said. No. Let me tell you about the Zelak Republic. 5 years ago, they captured a human trade ship. Within 1 month, half their military had bonded with the human prisoners. These Zelak warriors became so protective of their human friends that they started a civil war against their own government. The Republic collapsed in 6 months, Jake felt cold. That's terrible. Or consider the Morvek Empire. They tried to enslave a group of human colonists. But the Morvek guards who were supposed to watch the humans began to see them as family instead of prisoners. These guards helped the humans escape, and then fought against their own people to protect them. The Empire has been in chaos ever since. We didn't mean for any of that to happen, Jake said weakly. Of course you didn't, Vaktar replied. That's what makes you so dangerous. You destroy civilizations without even trying. You turn our strongest warriors into protective parents who will die before they let harm come to their human friends. Captain Foster stepped forward. Commander Vaktar, we had no idea about any of this. Earth has never received reports of these incidents. Because the species involved are too ashamed to admit what happened, Vaktar said. How do you tell the galaxy that your mighty empire fell because your warriors fell in love with a group of weak, soft humans? Jake looked at Zarathul. who had been silent during this conversation. Is this true? Do you feel this way about me? Zarathul was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft and sad. I have been a warrior my whole life, Jake Martinez. I have fought in 100 battles and killed enemies without mercy. I have never felt fear or doubt or loneliness that I would admit to anyone. She paused and looked directly at him. But when I look at you, I feel something I have never felt before. I want to keep you safe. I want to make you happy. I want to be near you and hear your voice. These feelings make no sense to me, but they are stronger than anything I have ever experienced. You see, Vokhtar said from the screen. My niece, who is one of our greatest warriors, has become like a mother protecting her child. This is the curse your species brings wherever you go. So what happens now? Captain Foster asked. Vokhtar was quiet for a moment. Now we must decide what to do about it. Zarathul is the daughter of our emperor. She cannot stay here and bond with humans. But she also cannot return home as she is. The change in her would be seen as weakness, and weakness is not tolerated in the imperial family. What are you saying? Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew. I am saying that your presence has created a problem that may only be solved by removing either you or my niece from existence. The bridge became very quiet. Jake could hear his own heart beating as he realized that his strange friendship with Zarathul might have started something that could end in death for both of them. But Vokhtar wasn't finished talking. However, there may be another solution. A dangerous one, but perhaps the only choice we have. What solution? Jake asked. You could come with us, Vokhtar said. Return to our homeworld and meet with our emperor. Help us understand this power your people have and perhaps find a way to control it. Jake looked around the bridge at his friends and shipmates. Leaving Earth and humanity behind to go with alien warriors seemed like madness. But when he looked at Zarathul, he saw hope in her red eyes for the first time since he had met her. The choice he made next would change not just his life, but the future of both their species. Jake stared at the screen showing Commander Vokhtar's scarred face. The choice the alien warrior had given him seemed impossible. Go with the Korthak to their homeworld, or watch as the situation spiraled into violence that could hurt both Zarathul and his crewmates. I need time to think, Jake said finally. You have 1 hour, Vokhtar replied. After that, I must make decisions that none of us will like. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Captain Foster was the first to speak. Jake, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. What other way? Jake asked. You heard what he said. Other alien civilizations have been destroyed because of people like me. I can't let that happen here. Lieutenant Harper stepped forward. This whole situation is crazy. We're talking about one maintenance worker having the power to topple empires. It doesn't make sense. Dr. Collins had been quiet during the conversation with Vokhtar, but now she looked thoughtful. Actually, it makes more sense than you might think. I've been studying Zarathul's behavior for the past few days, and I've noticed some interesting things. Like what? Captain Foster asked. Her stress levels drop significantly whenever Jake is around. Her heart rate slows, her breathing becomes more regular, and her brain activity shows patterns similar to what we see in humans when they feel safe and protected. Jake felt uncomfortable with everyone looking at him. I'm not doing anything special. I just talk to her like a normal person. That might be exactly what makes it special, Dr. Collins said. Think about what we know about Korthak culture. They're taught from birth to be aggressive, dominant, and never show weakness. But Jake treats Zarathul with kindness and respect without expecting anything in return. Zarathul, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. Dr. Collins speaks truth. In my world, every interaction is about power. Who is stronger? Who can dominate? Who will submit? But Jake does not try to dominate me or submit to me. He simply accepts me. That doesn't explain why it affects you so strongly, Lieutenant Harper said. Perhaps it does, Zarathul replied. Imagine you have been thirsty your entire life, but you did not know what water was. Then someone offers you a drink, and for the first time you understand what you have been missing. Jake sat down heavily in a nearby chair. So what you're saying is that I accidentally made you addicted to kindness. Not addicted, Zarathul said gently. Awakened. You showed me feelings I did not know existed. Now that I know they exist, I cannot pretend they do not matter. Captain Foster walked over to Jake. Son, I can't order you to make this choice. It has to be your decision. But I need you to understand what you'd be risking. If you go with them, we might never see you again. And if I don't go, Jake said, Zarathul might be killed for showing weakness, and the Korthak might decide humans are too dangerous to leave alone. The truth of the situation was becoming clearer to everyone on the bridge. This wasn't just about Jake and Zarathul anymore. It was about the future relationship between humanity and a powerful alien empire. Dr. Collins pulled up some files on her tablet. I've been researching the incidents Vaktar mentioned. I found references to them in our intelligence databases, but they were classified. What do the files say? Captain Foster asked. They confirm what Vaktar told us. In every case where humans have had extended contact with alien species, some members of those species have developed what our analysts call protective bonding syndrome. The aliens become emotionally attached to specific humans and will go to extreme lengths to protect them. How extreme? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. In one case, a group of Zelak warriors murdered their own commanding officer when he threatened to harm a human prisoner. In another, an entire Morvek military unit deserted their posts to help human refugees escape persecution. Lieutenant Harper looked disturbed. These aliens are willing to betray their own people for humans they barely know? It's not betrayal to them, Zarathul said. When the bonding happens, protecting the human becomes more important than following orders or maintaining loyalty to abstract concepts like government or empire. Jake felt sick. I'm turning people into traitors without even meaning to. No, Zarathul said firmly. You are showing them what it means to care about someone other than themselves. This is not a bad thing, even if it causes problems. Tell that to the civilizations that collapsed, Lieutenant Harper said sarcastically. Perhaps those civilizations needed to collapse, Zarathul replied calmly. Perhaps they were built on cruelty and oppression, and contact with humans simply revealed their weaknesses. This comment started an argument between Zarathul and Lieutenant Harper, but Jake wasn't really listening. He was thinking about his life on Earth. He had a small apartment, a job he enjoyed, and friends who would miss him, but he also knew that if he stayed, he might be responsible for a war between species. I have to ask, Jake said, interrupting the argument. Zarathul, what would happen to you if I don't come with you? Zarathul was quiet for a moment. The Emperor would probably have me executed for bringing shame to the imperial family. And if I do come with you? I do not know. No human has ever visited our homeworld. You would be the first of your kind to meet the Emperor. It would be very dangerous. More dangerous than certain death? Perhaps not certain death, but definitely uncertain survival. Jake stood up and walked to the window. The Korthak ships waited in space like sleeping predators. In 1 hour, Vaktar would expect an answer. There's something else to consider, Dr. Collins said. If Jake goes with them, he might be able to learn more about this bonding phenomenon. Maybe he could find a way to control it or at least help both species understand it better. Or he could end up as a prisoner or worse. Captain Foster said. That's a risk I'll have to take, Jake said, turning back to face the group. Because if I don't go, the risk to everyone else might be even greater. Zarathul stepped toward him. Jake Martinez, you do not have to do this for me. I am a warrior. I have always known that death might come at any time. This isn't just about you, Jake said. It's about preventing a war that could hurt a lot of innocent people. You are certain of this choice? Jake looked around the bridge at his friends and colleagues. Then he looked at Zarathul, whose red eyes showed both hope and fear. No, he said honestly. I'm terrified. But I think it's the right thing to do. Captain Foster nodded slowly. Then we'll support your decision. But Jake, I want you to remember something. You're not just representing yourself out there. You're representing all of humanity. The way you handle this could determine how aliens see our entire species for generations to come. No pressure, Jake said with a weak smile. Actually, there is pressure, Dr. Collins said, but I think you can handle it. You've already shown that you can form positive relationships across species barriers. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Jake took a deep breath. He had made his choice. Now he just had to hope he would live long enough to see if it was the right one. When he contacted Vaktar to give his answer, the alien commander seemed pleased but not surprised. I thought you would choose this path, Vaktar said. It shows wisdom and courage. But remember, human, once we reach our homeworld, there will be no going back. You will be committed to seeing this through to the end. I understand, Jake said. Good. Prepare yourself for a journey that will change both our peoples forever. As Jake prepared to leave the only life he had ever known, he wondered if he was making the biggest mistake in human history or taking the first step toward a better future for both species. Time would tell, but first he had to survive what was waiting for him in the Korthak Empire. The journey to the Korthak homeworld took 12 days. Jake spent most of that time in a guest quarters aboard Vokhtar's flagship, talking with Zarathul and learning about the empire he was about to enter. The more he learned, the more worried he became. The Korthak Empire was built on strength and conquest. Weakness was not just discouraged, it was often punished by death. The emperor himself was said to be the strongest warrior in the empire's history, someone who had never lost a battle or shown mercy to an enemy. "Are you sure your father will listen to me?" Jake asked Zarathul as they looked out at the stars. "He will listen," she said. "Whether he will accept what you say is another question." Jake had noticed something interesting during the journey. His presence seemed to affect other Korthak besides Zarathul. The ship's crew had started treating him with unusual respect. They brought him food without being asked, made sure his quarters were comfortable, and some even started conversations with him about their own lives and families. Most surprising of all was Commander Vokhtar himself. The fierce warrior had begun joining Jake and Zarathul for meals, and during these conversations he had started sharing stories about his own doubts and fears as a military leader. "Is this normal?" Jake asked Zarathul after one dinner where Vokhtar had talked about the guilt he felt over soldiers who had died under his command. "No," she said quietly. "My uncle has never spoken of such things to anyone. In our culture, a commander who admits to doubt would be seen as unfit for leadership. But he's talking about it now. Yes, and I think he feels better for it. Lighter, somehow." Jake was beginning to understand something important. The effect he had on aliens wasn't about making them weak. It was about giving them permission to be honest about their feelings, even the difficult ones. When they finally reached the Korthak homeworld, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet was covered in massive cities that looked like they had been carved from single pieces of black stone. Ships moved between the cities like schools of metal fish, and everything spoke of incredible technological advancement. But there was something cold about it all. The cities were impressive but not beautiful. They showed power but not creativity or joy. "Welcome to Thokran Prime," Zarathul said as their ship descended toward the largest city, home of the Korthak Empire and seat of my father's power. The imperial palace was even more impressive than the cities. It was a massive fortress that seemed to grow out of the planet's rocky surface. Guards in black armor stood at every entrance, and weapons that could probably destroy. Entire fleets pointed at the sky. Jake felt very small as they walked through corridors that could have held entire buildings from Earth. Everything was designed to make visitors feel overwhelmed and powerless. Finally, they reached the throne room. It was a huge chamber with a black throne at the far end, and sitting on that throne was the most frightening creature Jake had ever seen. Emperor Thokran was even larger than Vokhtar, covered in scars from countless battles. His red eyes seemed to look right through Jake, and when he spoke, his voice filled the entire room. "So," the Emperor said, "you are the human who has corrupted my daughter." Jake's mouth went dry, but he forced himself to speak. "Your Majesty, I never meant to corrupt anyone. I just tried to be kind to Zarathul when she was hurt and far from home." "Kindness," the Emperor repeated, as if the word tasted strange, an interesting concept. "In the Korthak Empire, we prefer strength. I think kindness and strength can exist together," Jake said, surprised by his own boldness. The Emperor leaned forward. "Explain." Jake took a deep breath. "Zarathul is one of the strongest people I've ever met, but she's also kind and thoughtful when she's allowed to be. Those qualities don't make her weak. They make her a better leader and a better person." "Person," the Emperor said. "You use this word to describe my daughter as if she were human. I use it because it's true. Species doesn't matter when it comes to feelings and friendship. Zarathul is a person who deserves respect and happiness just like anyone else." The throne room was completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat as he waited for the Emperor's response. Finally, Emperor Thokran spoke. "You speak strangely, human, but there is truth in your words." He looked at his daughter. "Zarathul, approach." Zarathul walked forward and knelt before the throne. "Father, tell me honestly, daughter, has this human's influence made you weaker?" Zarathul was quiet for a moment. "No, father. It has made me stronger. Not physically, but in other ways. I think more clearly now. I understand my soldiers better. I feel more connected to the people I'm supposed to protect. Interesting. The Emperor looked back at Jake. And you, human, what do you propose we do about this situation? Jake had been thinking about this question for days. I propose we learn from each other. Humans have something to offer the galaxy, but we also have a lot to learn from species like yours. Maybe we can find a way to work together that benefits everyone. You speak of cooperation between species. This is not the Korthak way. Maybe it could be, Jake said. Maybe there's room for a new way. Emperor Thokran stood up from his throne. He was even more intimidating standing, but Jake forced himself not to step back. You ask me to change the fundamental nature of my empire, the Emperor said. I ask you to consider that there might be more than one way to be strong, Jake replied. The Emperor walked down from his throne and stopped directly in front of Jake. For a moment, Jake thought he was about to be killed. Instead, the Emperor did something unexpected. He smiled. You have courage, human, and wisdom. Perhaps there is something to be learned from your species after all. Over the following days, Jake worked with Zarathul and a group of Korthak leaders to establish what they called the Cultural Exchange Protocol. The idea was simple. Humans would serve as cultural ambassadors throughout the galaxy, helping different species understand each other and find peaceful solutions to conflicts. In return, alien species would share their knowledge and technology with humanity, helping Earth advance and take its place in the galactic community. It wasn't perfect. There were still many Korthak who saw the new approach as weakness, and Jake knew there would be challenges ahead. But it was a beginning. The most important change was in Zarathul herself. She had been appointed as the first Korthak cultural ambassador, working directly with Jake to develop new diplomatic protocols. She was still a formidable warrior, but now she was also something new, a bridge between species. Do you think this will work? Jake asked her one evening as they watched the sunset from the palace gardens. I do not know, she admitted, but I think it is worth trying. You have shown me that there are many ways to be strong, and many reasons to fight. Sometimes the best battles are fought not with weapons but with understanding. Jake nodded. He thought about his old life on the Aurora, fixing pipes and engines. That life seemed very far away now, but in a strange way he was still fixing things, just bigger things. As news of the Cultural Exchange Protocol spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to take notice. Some were curious, others were skeptical, and a few were openly hostile to the idea of humans having any influence in galactic affairs. But Jake was learning that change always came slowly and with difficulty. The important thing was that it had begun. 6 months later, Jake received a message from Captain Foster. The Aurora had been designated as Earth's first official diplomatic vessel, and Dr. Collins had been appointed as the head of the new Department of Xenological Studies. More importantly, other human ships were beginning to make contact with alien species throughout the galaxy. Each contact brought new challenges and new opportunities, but also new hope for a future where different species could work together in peace. Jake smiled as he read the message. He might never see Earth again, but he knew that his homeworld was changing for the better because of what he and Zarathul had started. What news from your people? Zarathul asked, joining him in his study. Good news, Jake said. It seems like humans and aliens are starting to understand each other better. This pleases you? Yes, it does. Zarathul sat down beside him. Jake Martinez, I have a question for you. What's that? Do you ever regret your choice to come here? Jake thought about it seriously. Sometimes I miss my old life, but I think this is where I'm supposed to be. We're building something important here, something that could make the galaxy a better place for everyone. Even if it is dangerous, especially because it's dangerous. The best things in life usually are. Zarathul smiled, an expression that had become much more common since Jake had arrived. Then we will continue to build it together. As Jake looked out at the alien city that had become his home, he realized that sometimes the most important journeys were the ones you never planned to take. He had started as a simple maintenance worker fixing broken pipes, and somehow had become a diplomat helping to fix the relationship between entire species. It wasn't the life he had expected, but it was the life the galaxy needed him to live, and with Zarathul by his side, he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead.